All right, first thing I want to do today is just finish up the simple subs app. We already have all the skills we need. We just got to put them together. And a few more if statements and radio buttons and things to deal with. So I'm going to maximize that. And the next thing I'm going to have to work with, maybe, next thing we're going to have to work with is the meat. We figured out the cost of the bread, the additional items, and we'll deal with the soda. Then we have to deal with the quantity. All that wraps in. So now for the meat, we're going to do basically the same thing. And if you're trying to follow along, I hope you're in a happy typing mood because there's going to be a lot of it. I'm going to collapse. Again, I did a little bit of grading this weekend, and this is what they're supposed to look like when they're collapsed. Makes it much easier for me to grade, and they should be sorted. What I now need to do is basically steal this radio button code that figures out the bread cost to figure out the meat cost. So first thing I'm going to do is add my constants and add my class level variable for that. And now I need some more constants. There's a bunch, 4 different kinds of meat, private, one of those days, constant, decimal. Let's start with, what was first, turkey? Turkey, ham, roast beef, veggie. Okay, turkey cost equals $2, $2.25 for ham, $2.40. And I think I'm going to copy that and risk it with all of you watching me. You should be able to avoid any problems. And the cost, once again, since my memory is bad here, $2.25, $2.40, $1.75. Nothing magical. Now we're going to review. I did this for you at the end of the hour on Wednesday, where we did radio buttons in our Talk to the Animals thing, and then I put them in here. I'm going to go through that exact same process again. I'm going to double click one of the radio buttons to create a radio button event handler. Give it a quick description. Might as well steal this one up here. Saves the name of the most recent. Doesn't save the name. Whoa. Determines the cost of the most recently selected radio button. When I first started, it saved the name. And then we realized that, wait a minute, we're not really interested in the name. So we changed it to cost. Do the same thing here. This method determines the cost of the most recently selected radio button. Now I don't want to call it RDO Turkey because I'm going to wire all of my radio buttons to this. So I'm going to change its name to make it generic. Change it everywhere. And then I'm going back to the form, and I'm going to select the other 3 radio buttons and wire, using the lightning bolt, wire their check changed event to the exact same place. Now, whenever the user clicks on any one of these radio buttons, this event occurs. Inside that event, I need to figure out who was it. This is pretty much always the same. The sender tells us who that was. However, the sender is defined as an object, and we can't use an object for much of anything. So we told the program that, hey, you, I know you're a radio button, because that's all that causes these events. So it's a radio button. Convert it to a radio button. Give me its name. Store that in this variable. Then we take a look at that name, just like up above. Switch on the RDO name. Switches have curly brackets at the beginning and the end. It's part of what we've been learning here. I'm using a switch because the name of the radio button could be one of 4 things. And my question is, what's the name of the radio button? 4 answers makes a switch. If there's only 2 answers, or if there's multiple questions, then you have to use an if. And inside here, I now have to handle each one of the cases for each one of my radio buttons. If it's the turkey, then the meat cost is equal to the turkey cost. Each case in a switch statement gets a break. If there's only one statement like this, that's the one statement. If there's only one statement, you may immediately follow the case. But just so you have another example, if there's more than one statement, or if you prefer this, you can move them down to the next line. Just please don't mix them. It gets confusing. If I see code underneath, I tend to not read what's up here. And there may be more code there. If there's code up here, I don't always read underneath. I don't expect there to be anything underneath. So this is probably the best way to do that. Once again, all the radio buttons process pretty much the same way. So I'm going to create 3 more cases. You have to be careful though, because you're typing text here. You have to ensure that the capitalization matches your radio buttons. Notice there's no IntelliSense helping me out here. The reason there's no IntelliSense is because I'm inside of a string. Here I should get some IntelliSense help. And finally, veggie. Unlike if statements, if there's only one option left, I don't want you to put the default. Remember, in a switch statement, you can put default here. So if it's not turkey, it's not ham, it's not roast beef, default, it must be veggie. Yeah, in an if statement, that's true. But here, you can speed the process up a little bit. Default is kind of a catch-all by putting the actual value in, if you know what it is. We do know what it is. So for switch statements, particularly like radio buttons like this one, if you know all of the values that you're going to hit, list them. If you're got a default for a catch-all, everything greater than 100, everything less than 0. If you've got a catch-all default case, then default is appropriate. All right, so by this time I should have my meat cost figured out. So I should be able to, in button calculate now, add that to everything. The bread cost was determined by the RDO bread check change. The meat cost is determined by the RDO meat check changed. And because meat cost and bread cost are class level variables, I can use them everywhere. I can use them in the radio buttons. I can use them in the radio button meat processing down there, check changed, and I can use them up here in the calculate routine. Calculate the total cost of the order is the bread cost plus the meat cost plus the add-on cost. I can just keep building this now. Now it's time to test. That was a lot of code for one test, really. Okay, we know that Italian bread costs $2.10. If I remember right, my program might crash because there's nothing in meat cost yet. Yeah. No, I got my 190. Good, it didn't crash. So for the turkey, that's supposed to add $2, if I remember right. It did. Ham was 2.25, so that's another quarter to that would be 4.15. Yep. Roast beef was 2.40. I think it's going up to 4.30. Yep. And finally, veggie. I forget what Italian cost all by itself. What was the veggie cost? Veggie cost was $1.75 on top of the 190, about 3.65. There we go. And just to be safe, we could even change the bread. Should go down a little bit, go up a little bit. And if we add 1, 2, these are worth 85 cents total. Seems to be working. So you've got a couple of recordings now that are showing you how to create code to deal with radio buttons where you really want to delay the processing a little bit. In a way, we're delaying it, but in this case, it's kind of a hybrid, isn't it? When we click on the radio button, behind the scenes, the program remembers or determines the cost of the most recently selected radio button. Every time we click on a radio button. And then later when we click on calculate, we use that cost, so it's a bit delayed. We use that cost and add it to our total. Questions? All right, then we need to figure out the soda cost. That's just a checkbox. Which soda they pick doesn't matter. If they check this box, if it's lit, 75 cents. Create a constant for that because it can change. And then in the calculate routine, again, we're going to do a delayed timing here. And I'm going to create a variable. I just create a constant called soda cost. I did. Oh, this is legal. It's not a good idea. Right? I can have a variable locally, lowercase soda cost. I'm getting squiggle because I haven't ended it yet. But it makes me a little nervous to have two variables with basically the same name. Capitalization is different. One's a constant and the other one I'm using inside here. Now I want to figure out the soda cost. That takes an if statement. If the checkbox is checked, then the soda cost, or cost of soda, excuse me, equals the soda cost, the full-blown constant. Otherwise, notice there's no curly brackets here because just one statement. Curly brackets wouldn't be a bad idea. The cost of soda equals 0. They didn't pick it, we don't charge them. It's one way to deal with this. And then down here, we add the cost of soda. To my total. And that one should be real easy to check, but then I've got a couple of other plans. So right now it's $1.90, add a soda, should add 75 cents. It does. And that checkbox shouldn't be affected by mayonnaise, and it's not. This isn't bad. This is a little better. Now I don't need an else. Just say it's 0, unless they check the box then bump it up. That works. Another alternative. Initialize it when you declare it. Cost is 0. I could put an M on that because it's decimal, but it works. It's just doubles that don't play nice there. Now it's 0, and if it's checked, then we change it. I don't like that one as much because the 0 is way up there and the cost is down here. So let's move that back. I like that a little bit better, but let me show you one more option. I think in my notes, I hope in my notes, it just occurred to me that I haven't seen it. Not found. Ooh. Okay. Bonus material, not in the notes. There is another tool that's basically a shortcut for an if statement called an inline if. It's an if statement embedded inside of another equation. Now I have to remember what it looks like in C# because it's a little different in every language. I'm going to put parentheses around it, and I'm going to ask if the check soda is checked. Question mark. If it is checked, then what am I, see what I'm doing? Here's a plus. What am I adding? Well, first I ask a question. If the soda is checked, then add the soda cost. Otherwise, add a 0. Got lucky. That's another one of those that changes from language to language. This is called an inline if. It allows you, if you have very simple questions. This is a simple question. Is a checkbox checked? Then do something simple. If you're doing complicated things, use an if statement. My favorite use of this is putting an S on the end of something if it's plural. If the count is 1, then leave it blank, otherwise add an S. It's my favorite use because it's just something very simple. I want to add an S or not add an S. I can ask a very simple question. This, I think, is also pretty simple. If the soda is checked, then charge them. Add it. Otherwise, we add 0. This is an if statement. If you've done your Excel homework, that looks a lot like Excel. If, comma, here's what you do if it's true, comma, here's what you do if it's false. In most programming languages, the inline if uses a question mark and a colon. Let's check it. It's not checked. $1.90 for that. Now it's checked. Notice it doesn't matter if you pick one. $2.65. Turn it off. Back to $1.90. So it's still working. So that's called an inline if. It's not in the notes. Will be probably in Programming Logic Intermediate. Maybe I didn't intend to include it here. Use it sparingly for simple things. If you find a very complicated if statement or very complicated stuff here, equations and all kinds, that's not the right use of it. But for something simple like this, particularly if it's do something or do basically nothing, don't add anything, it's nice. So I've left this one up here so you can see that as well. And then underneath here, I'll say see the inline if below. Now the only thing that's left, really, we've totaled all of our charges, is to include the quantity. Because remember, the user has the ability to order more than one copy of this order. If they have a roast beef with cheese and a Coca-Cola and they want another one, they can have another one. Exactly the same. In a different sub, you got to pay for this one and get back to the end of the line and start over again at this sub shop. So now I actually want to bring in a user input that they can type into. But that's a quantity. So I don't think we can mess that up. Can I type in there? Let's run this and see if I can. I used a numeric up down, so that's handy. Can I type text in there? No. So this has to have a number in it. So I don't have to parse it. It's a double, but that shouldn't phase anything. Well, actually, it might be a decimal. But everything else is a decimal, so that should be okay. So I should be able to just multiply by the quantity. So I don't really even need a variable for that. Notice my cost of soda variable has been green line, meaning you're not using that. Why is it here? I'm not using it because I took out the if statement. So now down here at the end, all I want to do is multiply by the quantity. But I'm first going to pull that in. I still prefer to use a variable. Yeah. Let's do our input transfer up here where we should do it. I'm going to create a decimal called quantity, and a number of you have discovered this, and I'm getting used to it at least. Quantity equals whatever's in my, what is it called, nud quantity dot value. This is a decimal. If I don't make this a decimal, and really it's a quantity, I can't order 1.5. This really ought to be an integer. So then I need to convert this to an integer. So that gets it for me. Now I have a quantity, and down here I just need to multiply. There's the shortcut operator, right, from Unit 4. This says take whatever's in the total cost, multiply it by the quantity, put it right back in the total cost. I could have created a subcost or a subtotal, multiplied it by cost, and then created total cost that way. That's another way to do it. A lot of decent ways to do it. Now I have a total cost that includes everything, including the quantity. Let's make sure the quantity is working okay. So let's bump this up. An Italian bread's $1.90. Now it should be $3.80. Add mayonnaise. That's times twice. So that's 20 cents. Let's add a soda. Add another $1.50. Yep, seems to be working. But you can see the value of building this as you go. The value of copying code. And the value of learning from other examples. This program will help you with your starter program for Unit 5. There's a couple people have already discovered it's not exactly the same. I don't give you another simple subs one. It's got some subtle little twists in it to hopefully make you think. If you're going to steal code, remember you can steal the entire event handler, right? Copy this into your program. Then you have to wire it to all 4 radio buttons. You can steal the code. No, you won't be doing wheat, Italian, and sourdough at belts. By the time you tweak this, you might have been better off just typing it. And don't leave the RDO bread, because at belts there is no bread. So if you copy and paste, make sure you rename, otherwise Eagle Eyes catches those things and you get to change it later. So be careful. This is a sample program that's good, I think. Needs a little tweaking here and there at the end of my calculation routine. What should I do? Set focus, right? I don't think I've even written the clear routine yet, so we better do that if this is going to be a good example. Here's button clear. Nope, didn't write it. Put it where it belongs. Again, if you collapse, it makes life a little easier. Button clear goes in between. I think I've been using resets lately. It's amazing how easy your programs are to grade when you steal my stuff for comments on these things. What was I doing? Oh, clearing. So top of the form are my radio button. Ooh, I didn't clear a radio button. Can't. User can't. We can. We're the almighty programmers. And the user cannot deselect a radio button. You can't turn it off by clicking on it again. You, the programmer, could provide a none option, which is kind of what veggie is here, right? It doesn't make sense for bread. So what do we do? Well, when we started this, didn't we pick Italian to start with? When we reset, we should put it back. RDO Italian dot checked equals true. What if it's already true? That does nothing. Leaves it. What if it's not? Does two things. It checks it on the form, but it also causes a check changed event, which then changes the current cost of bread back to whatever Italian is behind the scenes. So if the user never picks a different bread because they like Italian, they get charged the right amount. But with meat, we didn't have one, so we want to clear them. How do you set a radio button? Set it to true. So how do you clear a radio button? Set it to false. Good. One problem. Which one? Ooh, interesting. So I could say RDO turkey dot checked equals false. And then ham, and then roast beef, and then Italian, right? That'll work. If you had 10 radio buttons, it'd be a little tedious, but not bad. And most people don't have more than 10 radio buttons. That gets old to use. Here's a shortcut, power tip. Huh? Doesn't that check it? Yeah. And now I know which one's checked. And I turn it off. This turns off all the others. And this turns off the one that's on. Shortcut. Tim's nodding, must make sense. Okay. So that comes in handy. What else we got to do? We got to turn off all the checkboxes. Is there an easy way to do that? Unfortunately, no, because they're all independent, right? So now we have to say check. I'm going to use them alphabetically from this list here so I don't forget any. I'm typing a T and then pressing Control Space. Control Space says, give me the list. And C# goes, oh, there's only one. Fills it in for you. So you don't have to do all that typing if you don't want to. That checkbox. Then there's another checkbox for soda. And underneath the soda, there's a soda selection. Even though we're not charging them individually, the user can still pick one. We want to turn all those off. So once again, I'm going to use my shortcut. Turns off all of those. And we did those, did those, did those. We need to reset the order date. Probably should clear the first and last name. Probably should have done those first. Quantity, put it back to 1. Yeah, you're right. This is pretty boring stuff. Especially the way he types. And I think I got just about everything covered now. Did those. Total cost label. Got to clear that out. My output, and then we're done. Oops. And put the focus back to the beginning, which was text first name, I believe. Quick check. Focus, Italian, everybody else is reset. So far my date picker is behaving itself. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to add a form load event. Probably going to need it for my welcome screen that I'm not adding to this one. And do I already have a form load? I do. Turn down the radio buttons, made the soda panel invisible, and set the date picker to today, just to be safe. Still haven't figured out when that changes. Described all my methods. I do have a documentation file. Is it up to date? Pretty much. Except the year's not right. And I don't have a welcome screen attached here, but you should be getting pretty good at that by now. You will still have welcome screens for your Unit 5 programs. Questions? Okay, I will save that. It'll be up on OneDrive. You can get your own copy, and you should be using it as your guide, at the very least, your guide for the Unit 5 programs. Next topic. In a way, we're going back to if statements. If statements have conditions, switch statements, not really. If statements have conditions, and so far all of our conditions have been fairly simple. If the quantity is greater than 5, if the checkbox is checked, if the radio button is checked. But oftentimes conditions come a little more complicated. These are called compound conditions, where we want to take a look at two things. I'm on page 29 for those of you trying to find me, but that's in my online notes. It should be fairly close. Sometimes we have multiple conditions in one question. It's called compound conditions. Most of these should look pretty familiar. If I get home early and there's food in the fridge, I'll cook. Otherwise, we order pizza. Now, knowing what you know about the English language, if I said, if I get home early and there's food in the fridge, I'll cook. If I get home late, am I cooking? What if there's food in the fridge? Well, according to this statement, the only way I cook is if I get home early and there's food in the fridge. If I get home early and there's no food, I'm obviously not cooking. If I get home late and there's no food, not likely. The only way that I'm cooking is when both conditions are true. These conditions are joined by, I think it's called a conjunction, and. We use them in English all the time. Now we're going to use them in programming. You can create compound conditions that says, if this and this and this and this, then I'm cooking. Another conjunction we frequently use is or. If the roads are too icy, or there's too much snow, then I'm staying home. Otherwise, I'll see you wherever it is we're supposed to meet. You guys had a 35-minute class, Paul? Wow. You guys should be so lucky, don't you think? All right. Again, the keyword or here. If it's icy, but there's not much snow, am I driving? No, I'm staying home. Because this says if the roads are too icy or there's too much snow. One or the other. If one or the other is true, I'm staying home. What if it's too icy and there's too much snow? I'm definitely staying home. Because they're both true. It's icy and snowy. Why would I drive? If it's not icy and there's not too much snow, only when they're both false do I go. What you see here on the screen are called truth tables. They kind of explain the above. Whenever you have an and, you always have two conditions. When there's a conjunction, a compound condition, there has to be two complete conditions. If condition 1 is true and condition 2 is true, the end result is true. In any other case, when you say the word and, the result is false. So let's use early and food in the fridge. I'm early. Yep. There's food in the fridge. Yep. Cook. My result is cook. I'm home early. There's no food. Don't cook. I'm home late, but there's food. Don't cook. I'm home late and there's no food. Forget it. That's what F means here. Not false, but forget it. The or condition is a little bit different. Notice the results. One or the other. Either both, one or the other, or both are true. The result is true. Another way to look at it, it's the only time it's false is when they're all false. Ice, snow. Got ice and snow, staying home. That's the result is staying home. Ice, but no snow, stay home. No ice, but snow, stay home. No ice, no snow. Go to the party, whatever. The results of an and compound condition will only be true if both conditions are true. The results of an or condition are true whenever either or both conditions are true. You're not limited to just two. You can add a little more complexity. If I can raise the money and I can find the sitter and I get my car fixed, I'm going to the trip, the baseball game, or whatever it is, field museum. But in order for me to go, I've got to have the money for the museum fees. Got to find a sitter for my kid or cat, whichever it is. And I have to have my car fixed, otherwise how am I going to get there? Any one of these falls through. Any one of them is false. I don't go. The only way I go is if they're all true. Another version of the same. If I can raise the money, or students get to go free, or my parents give me the money, then I go. If any one or more are true, you get to go. I raised the money, but students aren't free and your parents didn't give you any money. You get to go. I didn't raise the money, but students go free. You get to go. Didn't raise the money, students aren't free, but my parents are being generous. You get to go. I raised the money, cool. Then I found out it's free, extra cool. And then my parents slipped me a 20, even more cool, I'm still going. So with or conditions, any one of them, good enough. The answer is true. And conditions, all of them have to be true. Another way to look at them is any one is false. The end result is false. Whichever way helps you remember. Questions? Compound conditions. Where things get a little nasty is when you start mixing ands and ors. In C#, they actually have a precedence. The ands get done first. And that kind of threw us, well, we were surprised in JavaScript. I didn't think that was the case, but it was. Even in JavaScript, the ands were done first. When you start mixing these, there's no simple way to say when they're true and when they're false. You have to build what my counterpart in Wisconsin Rapids calls a truth table, with every possible combination of trues and false. Have you studied binary and networking fundamentals yet? Ones and zeros, and what does the number 10 look like in ones and zeros? That number right there is false, false, false. That's all zeros, right? False, false, true. That's a 1. False, true. False, 0, 1, 0, 2. 0, 1, 1. 1, 0, 0, 1, 0. It's just counting up or down if you prefer. And what happens if we throw in a fourth condition or a fifth condition? 2 to the power. This is 3 questions. There are 3 conditions. There are 8 different possibilities. Add a fourth, it doubles, 16 different possibilities. Add a fifth, doubles again, 32 different possibilities. And you really need to figure out what expected answer. What I'm really doing here is coming up with a test plan. If I say true, 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 I expect, this is my favorite example here. Okay. Condition 1 is, do I have homework? Condition 2 is, do I have a test tomorrow? And condition 3 is it snowing? If I finish my homework and I finish studying, or tomorrow it's snowing so hard, tomorrow's going to be a snow day, then I'll meet you at the bar. It's snowing that hard, you're going to the bar. Not a wise choice, but it's probably just around the corner, so walk. Okay, so a very important little truth table here, a little app that will ultimately end up running. Okay. Do I go to the bar or do I stay home? I finished my homework and I finished studying for the test. Good student. And it's snowing really hard. Well, good. Have a good time. Study, study, no snow. All done. If you're a good student, you get to go to the bar. Of course, you have a test tomorrow. You might want to reconsider. Finish my homework. I haven't finished studying, but it's snowing. See you. Go to the bar. Here's a different one. Notice, we've got a bunch of trues. Now all of a sudden we sneak a false in there. Finish my homework, but not the test. And it's not snowing. Make like a good student, stay home. Didn't do my homework. Did study for the test though. And now it's snowing, go to the bar. And why am I going to the bar? Because whenever it's snowing, I get to go to the bar, notice? Because of the or. As long as snowing is true, that's one condition that's true. That's all I need in this case. I get to go. Because it's 1/2 of an or. There are a few exceptions, like this one, where I get to go to the bar even if I haven't, or even if I have, even if it's not snowing, I still get to go because I did my work. Unfortunately, that only shows up once. I love the last one. Didn't do my homework, didn't study, it's not snowing. Mom, can I go to the bar? I don't think so. So these you really have to be careful of. The testing of compound conditions are very difficult. You really have to test every single one to be sure. Now, if your compound conditions are an and an or, you can use this truth table. Because this truth table tells you what the answer should be, and then you run your program to see if it really works. I have actually on purpose, put parentheses around the or to make it happen first. What's really nasty is it only gives me the wrong answer 2 out of 8 times. 6 out of 8 times. If you don't test them all, there's a pretty good chance you're going to get the answer you want. And you go, good enough, turn into Volcker, and Volcker looks at parentheses around the or, really? And I test it, and it doesn't work. We'll try it here in just a second. Got to check them all. Remember, you can override the order of precedence, which is and first, by putting parentheses around those. The conditions can be complicated. How do we do it in C#? We do not use the words and or. That's MySQL and JavaScript. No, not even JavaScript. MySQL. Use 2 ampersands. That's a Shift 7 on your keyboard. 2 of those in a row, no space in between. I usually put spaces around them because readability improves significantly. If you want to use or, use 2 vertical bars. Ew. Where's that? Right above your return key on the Mac keyboard, shifted backslash. 2 of those right next to each other. Again, no spaces in between, but you don't put spaces around those. They definitely get lost in the equation. The exclamation mark, kind of hard to read there because it's not very big. Well, there we go. It's an exclamation mark. It's pronounced not. The not operator simply reverses the statement. Not true is false, not false is true. So occasionally you want to ask a question and say, if it's not snowing, you can put an exclamation mark in front of the question. It'll say not snowing. We'll see some examples of those. Okay, let's stop there. I am going to go to a break. Let's take a break. When we come back, I'm going to download from OneDrive a sample program up there called Compound Conditions. So if you want to try to follow along, there's not a lot of typing. You don't have to follow along. But if you want to try to follow along, you can download it as well, and we'll do that for the next hour.